Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Callie.
And welcome back to the Book Common Room podcast. Hi, welcome back to the Book Common Room podcast. We're so glad for you guys to join us for another episode. And we are super excited. We're super excited every month, but we're super excited to talk. Well, maybe because we choose these books.
Probably. We choose our favorites.
Yeah, we've chosen... Yeah, some of our favorites. But we do feel like these books are pretty accessible generally for people that are interested in reading again, wanting to learn how to love to read. But we're super pumped to be introducing The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Wang.
I'm so excited, guys.
I know you are. I can tell by like how this whole month has been going. So
I was so excited that I may have overdone the research and the rereading. It's fine. I had fun.
You can't have overdone it. I think it'll give a texture to this episode, and I'm super excited. So once again, non-spoiler episode. So we'll just be introducing the text and the influence of the text and why we feel like this is, I don't know, an important book that we think people should read. And also, if you're starting to read, this book might be for you.
I was thinking we could start out just with a very brief overview what The Sword of Kaigen is about if you've never heard of it before. This isn't one of those like great classics that everybody knows. Mm-hmm. It should be, but it's not. Anyway, so The Sword of Kaigen is about Misaki and Mamoru, and they live, it's technically supposed to be like futuristic modern day type world, but they specifically live in a town, a Japanese town that goes by very old traditional Japanese values. So Mamoru's going to like a samurai school, and Misaki is a mom of four boys, but the whole book is basically just about them, their relationship, but it's also a war book. So the war does happen, and it's very tragic. But I would say the main premise of the book is you're following these two characters through basically just kind of this crazy year that happens.
Yes.
To their small traditional town.
Yes, and that I think that's the key too, is like the setting for this story is very archaic. They are very traditional, of like when you think of Japanese culture, early Japanese culture, even though it's taken place in contemporary times.
Yeah, so this book for me was really easy to get into because my grandma's Japanese and I lived in Japan for a couple years. So it's easy to like read it and just accept what was in front of me because I was like, oh yeah, that's just kind of how Japan was and how it kind of is a little bit today.
Yeah.
So I was able just to slide in, but I have heard some reviews say that the first like 100-ish pages are a little hard.
Yes.
She goes in a lot of like explanation of the world, what's going on.
World building.
I love it when books do that.
I do too. And also, like, it was interesting because I've recently had this conversation in my creative writing class that I'm taking right now, which has been crazy because I'm not a very good writer. I'm good at reading and researching, but I'm not good at, like, creatively writing. But, like, these students had mentioned how if someone comes to them and say, there's this really good book series, but it takes a while to get into it. Like, the first two books are kind of, like, you have to slosh through. And they were just like, that's an immediate, like, no for me. Because they just say, like, oh, like, if I have to get through it to enjoy it, like, the book should be capturing me at the very beginning. And so I do think while the first 100 pages are pretty, like, exposition, like, heavy in the world building, I think it's very interesting. Like,
it's for me, so interesting.
Like, as a reader. Yeah. Like, the politics of it all is very interesting, and it's super important to the rest of the story. So, like, if it is kind of boring for you at the beginning, it is because it's, like, this explanation, but it's still interesting. So, just so you are aware.
Well, and Emma Wang, I feel like she treats the reader like they're smart. Like, she's not going to explain every little Japanese word she's going to throw in there. She's just going to...
Or the sense of time.
Yeah. She's just going to assume, as the reader, that you can figure it out. Because you can. But that's just kind of how it works.
Yes. Because, like, in the book, they use very specific terms to explain the passage of time. And I've never understood the difference between them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think that's Japanese. I think that's...
I
think that's something she came up with.
I think so, too. I didn't think it was Japanese. Yeah. But it was interesting because I think... it's not important for you to know exactly the passage of time, just to know that they have this language that separates at least this world to be more fantasy than like our world today.
Yeah.
So I did enjoy that, but it's so good. Also, sorry, this is like a side note. You have a picture of Emma Wang up. I've never known what she looked like. If you look her up, she's how I imagine Misaki looking.
Oh, really? We'll put her up.
Yeah.
On here.
We'll put her up.
Emma Wang, she is Chinese.
Okay.
So she did a lot of research when going and writing a Japanese book.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of people say this book is like the magic system of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and the Poppy War. You know the Poppy War series? It's like a combo of the two. A war book.
What an amazing book combination to
with
make.
elemental magic.
So cool. Wow. That should be our hook for this.
I didn't come up with that.
Because if you say, like, if you quote that, like, people will be like, oh, like, if you like these things, you're going to really like this book. Interesting. I love that.
Yeah, but, I mean, these main characters are a lot easier to back than the main characters in the Poppy War. I will say that.
Oh, yeah. But also, the Sword of Kaigen is so compelling to me because it's the perspective of a young boy and then his mom.
Yeah, that's my favorite part. Like, when else have you read a book that is about a mom and a son?
And she is so cool. Misaki is so cool.
I love her.
I also get really frustrated with this book. Mm-hmm. I think it's fantastic, but I get very frustrated because of the cultural differences of like what my life is like and versus like what it was like in this setting of the story, as well as I don't know if this is spoiler. We can cut this out if we feel like it is, but Misaki is in an arranged marriage.
Yeah,
and
that's how it
was, and so. And it's interesting, and I've done research on, like, the successes of arranged marriages. Like, it's very interesting culturally, but in this book series, like, there's, like, things that I'm like, oh, this drives me nuts. Like, I could not have a partner like this, or, like, I couldn't explain things like this, or, like, I don't know, communication just looks very different.
Yeah.
And I would get so frustrated. But I think that's part of the charm of the book, and, like, why I like the book so much is because it seems so real and so raw, and I love that.
Yeah, this book definitely deals with sexism and the repercussions of that and what a traditional marriage at the time might have looked like and all the not great, but all of the juicy things.
Yes, and even more than that, like even into like politics and government and oppression and things like that I think, like how the heck,
propaganda.
That's a lot to chew, and she does it so seamlessly. Anyways, I wish I could write like her.
I know. And our spoiler episode, we'll dive specifically more into all of that. But just a premise as you're getting into that. That's just a taste of what's to come.
It's very interesting. And I think anyone with a lot of interests and diverse interests will, I think, be very entertained by this book.
Oh, yeah. If you go on Goodreads or just listen to really anyone talk about this book, they always say the beginning was a little hard to get into.
Yeah.
But it's probably one of the best books that they've ever read.
And when you reread it, it just gets better.
It does, because then you get to the beginning that was harder to read. And you're like, oh, I get why that's all there.
Yes, and rereading it too, like you catch so many more things where it's like, this definitely is a book that is meant to be revisited.
Oh, 100%. She, in the first 50 pages, is like, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Yes.
And the rest of the book, but you don't notice it.
No.
Do you reread it?
And you won't. No matter how hard you try reading this, you will not know what's going to happen.
Okay, well, do you have anything else to say about your review or what the book's about?
My review, just, it is so amazing. And, I don't know. I can't, I think I'll have more to say in the non-spoiler, I think. Or the spoiler. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this book specifically is very hard to talk about non-spoilerly.
Yeah.
So, we're going to transition.
So good. Such a good book, you guys. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to transition into who Emma Wang is as an author. She was honestly a little hard to figure out because she's not on like social media or anything. She has her website.
She self-publishes.
One of her most recent books, Blood Over Brighthaven, just got picked up to be traditionally published. I'm getting that next Tuesday. I've read that. Okay. So I have already bought her self-published version. Mm-hmm. I ordered the traditional published version also. It's coming on Tuesday.
Very cool.
I'm very excited. That is also a very good book about prejudice, war, politics, society.
Yeah.
It's great. Mm-hmm. Go read that one too. Anyways. But she, on her website, her introduction just says, "Hi, I'm Emma Wang, author, martial artist," and that is very important. The fighting scenes in the Sword of Kaigen are so good.
Like, they make
You can tell
so much
she's
sense.
studied martial arts.
Yes.
And she's then applied that in this book. And anyways, it continues and says, and weird recluse currently hiding somewhere in Wisconsin with my marooned belly parakeet Sulu, who's so cute. I enjoy gruesome nature documentaries and long walks in circles around my room.
I love that so much.
Which my sister would relate to that.
Like, my sister does
circles.
too. She paces. She paces so much.
It's just a way to unwind.
Yeah.
Anyways, but that's just kind of like what she has said about her. She's done a couple interviews when talking about the Sword of Kaigen, and she specifically did an interview with the Fantastic Book Critic, and she basically just goes on to explain that she was born in Wisconsin in 1992, and she wanted to be an author since the age of 9, and she just never grew out of it. She says that she spends her time between writing fantasy books and working at a martial arts school in her home city of Madison. When explaining her world building, which is a massive part of this book, there is like the magic in it, but world building is kind of her core. She says, 90% of my world building research has been devoted to the Mande of West Africa. This is because the Mande are primarily inspiration of the dominant people on planet Duna, which is the planet in here. Called the Yamanakalu, the dark-skinned fire elements. So part of this book is, it's technically part of a world she's already established in her Theonite series, which she's tragically not like even selling it anymore. You can't buy the book anywhere. Not this one, the Theonite world and series. So she wrote the Theonite series before she wrote this. That has all of the explanation of who is who and the politics. I feel like that's why the beginning is also kind of clunky. Because it's like you technically should have read that series and then read this book.
Yes.
So when you get into this book, all of the world and politics is explained.
And like the functioning of the empire.
And the names and everything. Like that's already established.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Six of Crows. You could technically read Six of Crows on its own without reading Shadow and Bone.
Yeah.
But she explains the world in Shadow and Bone and then just assumes you know what it is in Six of Crows.
True. Okay.
It's kind of like that relationship. But you can't buy those anymore.
She
felt like they just aren't up to her standards. So she's pulled it out.
Good for her, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Anyways, Duna is the world.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Japanese is the Kaigenese. And then we've got the Korean is Junsun. And they've got Chinese.
Which is, they're
the bad guys in this book.
Ranganese.
And then you've got the Yamakalu, which is West Africa. So those are kind of like the main... I hope that this is not confusing.
It might be, and it's not super important, but we're just doing it for the sake of explanation, because when you read this, like, it's not, like, super important to always know the difference.
got confused, though, reading it, who was who.
Yeah.
I had a hard time grasping what was going on. But basically, you've got the Empire, which is Japan, Korea, West Africa. And then China are the oppressors.
Yeah, and then there's, like, some Chaldeans mixed in there, which are supposed to be, like, representations of Europeans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are, like, the main characters in it. And that's kind of where her world building came from, was taking from those cultures.
Yeah.
But as she continues and says, as the name Wang might suggest, she's neither West African nor Japanese. She says her mom is American and her dad's from China. So she just did a ton of research into what these types of worlds look like and the cultures and different things like that. But she basically goes on and says that as she was writing this, she was actually very depressed. Like, she doesn't like thinking about writing this book because it's a very dark time for her, but it was cathartic. She says that she wrote this long meditation. This is basically what it was for her in the world that we grow up in today. And she said, I won't dump all that baggage here, but the underlying premise of Planet Duna is that it takes the radical hierarchies of our own history and flips them, giving the reader a chance to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. So basically the whole point is putting yourself into someone's shoes that you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in America, you don't know what a traditional Japanese family is like.
Yeah.
So we're going to put you there.
Yeah.
And you're going to walk a mile in their shoes, and you're going to go through all of the emotions that they experience.
I definitely feel like she succeeded in that. for sure.
100%. But that was kind of like her whole goal for reading this book. And again, I'm always hesitant to give stuff like this of like why the author might have written a book.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it can possibly sway your reading of something. And I do feel like your reading is very personal to you.
Absolutely.
So like if none of this made sense, or if it wasn't helpful, I'm sorry. But for some, it is. Sometimes I do feel like I need a explanation of who the heck is going on.
And
I
also,
do that for Lord of the Rings.
It's really good too, though, because in this book you do meet a lot of these different cultures, and it's important to know because, like, some of these cultures are supposed to be very hateful of the other. And so being able to know that distinction is good. Otherwise, you won't understand why characters are responding the way they are.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole point, is each nation, basically, they're all pitted to hate each other by the government.
And,
There's
like, their histories. Like, it's like if you went to Europe and tried to learn American history, and then you're an American, you're learning British history. Like, there's so many different takes. And like, the role of censorship is very prominent in the book, which is interesting because, like, we're facing that today, I think, just like we have in the past, but even more so with social media and things like that. So it's very, very interesting.
And I feel like Mamoru's character is supposed to hold the position of someone who's never heard of other voices. They've only heard the one history. So they take that as fact.
And he's like this. So, and the other thing is, you'll learn this as you read the book, but Mamoru is 14 years old. And then Misaki, of course, is like a mom of 4, so she's older. But it's interesting.
She's still young. I think she's in her 30s.
And she's like, well, just like, she's seasoned in life. And then Mamoru is very, I don't know, very naive, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, because then you've got Misaki, who she was very blessed. She actually got to go, it'll say in this book, but she was able to experience.
She's traveled.
So she holds, I feel like, the position of understanding everything and then figuring out how to react depending on the knowledge that's given to you and recognizing what's false and what's true.
Like, and so she recognizes nuances, whereas Mamoru does not.
Because he just doesn't know anything else.
Yeah, like, if you find out, like, someone's like, oh, yeah, your parents lied to you about this. Like, not saying that this is the book, but this is just an example. Like, if you find out, like, your parents were lying to you about something, that would, like, rock your world. Because you've only ever known, like, your parents being, like, this protector of you, and then you find out, like, they were... And it may not even be a bad thing. Like, they were just lying to you that the stove housed demons or something like that, because they wanted to keep you safe from
Gilmore
it.
Girls.
Gilmore Girls. This keeps cropping up, but like, just like things like that, and so Mamoru is kind of in that phase of life.
Yeah. So for the first majority of the book, you're following his journey on figuring out what's real, what's not real, what's
true,
what lies are being told to him by the government, and how does he stick up to a father who basically is the hand of the government,
because he's town. Like, from his family and his mom, they are like the head clan of this village that this book is taking place in.
So last little background on Wang and when she was writing this book. So she said this was originally modeled after Harry Potter. She imagined having some kids going to magical school and learning how to use their powers. That was her original thought process behind it. So you get a little bit of that. You get a little bit of Mamoru going to school. But it's been since evolved. And changed.
Yeah. Very cool.
But that was kind of like... She was really funny in her interview. She said something like she has this ego where she always thinks she can do better than what she's read.
Whoa, I'm the exact opposite. That's amazing.
So she read Harry Potter as a kid and was determined to do better. To do it, but better.
I actually kind of love that, though. She's like a kid, and she was like, oh, I can make this better.
But it was funny, because she recognized, like, that was kind of a ridiculous thing to think. But her young self was like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it better.
I love it, though, because it evolved into exactly what you had said. It's like elemental magic with martial arts. So you get that Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Oh, so fun. Okay, the other thing that I kind of want to explain that I hope is helpful and interesting. So I have a background in Japanese. We'll put it up here. I have gone through and translated all of the names. And and their meanings.
It's all in the details, you guys.
Yeah, in the back of the book, she has all of the character names, and she's assigned kanji to them. So you won't be able to see this, but I'm looking at like page 616 at Mamoru. Next to his name, there's kanji characters. So she, for every single character, she has assigned kanji to it. And she's so freaking smart. They all have such interesting meanings to them.
Which is interesting, too, because on the second read, Callie had, like, further translation insights that, like, added more depth to our understanding of the book. Because when I first read this, like, just for people out there who may have read this book already, I went in completely blind. I didn't know anything. I don't know Japanese. Like, sure, my limited understanding of, like, what anime I've seen, but I'm very limited, and I still had an amazing experience. But with this information I think we're going to give you, I think it'll just make your experience of reading this book even more enjoyable and interesting, and so...
But also, just...
Also look at the notes on it.
As a person...
I don't know if you see this, but...
This is why I love reading. I love reading.
Writing.
Yeah, taking notes, doing research. Like, going into each name and what each character means behind the name just made the book so much better for me. Because I got all of the information. I won't go through all of them now. I'm just going to go through just... Matsuda is the family. Is like the main head family of Kaigen. That is Mamoru Misaki's family name. So Matsuda, Matsu's to wait, and Da is rice field. There's not like that much deep meaning. I feel like a lot of really old Japanese names are just kind of like
that. But I also think last names like that in general, like my last name, it means like lard. And it's like in German for like people who would do that, or like people whose last name were Cooper were like barrel makers. Yeah. So Yeah, but one thing that I thought was really interesting that I just caught on this reread is she did mention that a lot of these old Japanese names, you've got Japanese that is now today that we have in this book, but there's a really, really old version of Japanese. Interesting. That does have a deeper, cooler meaning. Yeah. That the kanji that they use, but no one can read it now. So that, the Matsuda name is really old. That's the lesson to be learned. Anyway, so Mamoru. So Mamoru, the verb means to protect. So he's the protector of the book. Ma means true, the kanji. And then moru is to protect. So he basically is the protector of truth. Or like a true protector.
Or a true protector. Like he understands all. Not all, but he gets it. Yeah. And then Misaki is just like a very pretty woman name. Mi means sea or ocean, which makes sense for her. Yeah. And then Saki is blossom or bloom, which is very common in female names. Takeru, the father, who I have mixed feelings about Takeru. I don't like him, but this kind of explains his character. He's Taki means the point of the mountain, and then Ru is lapis lazuli. You know, the deep, like jade stone. Yeah. So it's basically that point of the mountain.
That is so perfect
for him, right?
I never knew what Takeru meant, but it makes so much sense.
He's basically the gem on the point of the mountain,
but also like stone. So like
he's hard,
cold, unfeeling. Like you never really know what he's thinking.
Never. So Misaki and Takeru are married. They have their oldest son Mamoru, and then they have 3 more boys: Hiroshi, Nagasa, and Izumo. She's got 4 boys. Hiroshi and Nagasa. I looked up the kanji for it, but I think what's most interesting is Hiroshi, like Hiroshima, and then Nagasa, like Nagasaki, the 2 main cities in Japan that was bombed in World War II. I think that was very intentional. Because this is a war book. Just tons of citizens destroyed. Yeah. Just all the tragicness of war. Yeah. And then Izumo, the youngest, this might be pulling, but it was a ship that was destroyed by the Americans in World War I that was in charge of protecting Japanese citizens. And for Japan at the time, this was a huge deal. Like this ship specifically was protecting the citizens on the harbor from the Americans from destroying them. And they got destroyed. So I feel like that's just another way of Wang alluding to the main themes in this book of what happens in war. And
everything is like fair game kind of a thing.
Everything is fair game. And like kind of what but really what happens to citizens.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, what's that Studio Ghibli movie? Fireflies?
Oh, Grave of the Fireflies.
Grave of the Fireflies.
That movie is incredible, but it's one you would only ever watch once because it's so devastating.
Yeah, it's like Schindler's List.
And the thing about it is it wasn't even like getting after the West or saying that the East was doing bad things either, because I feel like there's more commentary recently in like Godzilla narratives that like there was things Japan was doing itself that like hurt its citizens, but it was more of a commentary on like what war does to communities and how even in your own communities, even in your own families, people will turn on you.
Yeah.
So
well, that's also the beauty of this book. Like, we're following the Japanese, but the beauty of Misaki's character is she gives light to how everyone's just human.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of humans fighting each other. That's all it is. I mean, I would say Mamoru's more obvious about it. Yeah. But, like, that's really all it is.
And in other circumstances, you could have been friends. Like,
yeah.
And there's a lot of war narratives about that. Like, what do you think of? I think of War Horse. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that film, but there's this very good scene. And there's spoilers I'm about to say, so if you want to watch this, go ahead. But in the film, the horse, the, like, main horse that they are, like, focusing on gets stuck in a bunch of barbed wire, and the Germans throw wire clippers over the trenches to help I can't even remember what character it was, but to help the horse get out of it, and it was their enemy that they were helping. Yeah. And so it was interesting because it's like these men, these boys, these children are like hurting each other when in other circumstances they could have been friends, but everything has been pitted up against each other. So
yeah, well, I mean, you look at the person on the other side, they're probably a son, they could be a father, they could be a brother, who knows what they're leaving behind. They're just like you. They're just on the other side. Yeah. So it's just kind of like what happens when nations create history to change how you think about other people.
And manipulate to do their bidding kind of a thing in their agendas.
Oh, yeah, that's the whole thing with, like, learning the history about this place. Yeah. And what Mamoru goes through. Yeah. It's like, oh, I've been made to be a certain way. Yeah. Because the government wants me this way. I have been made to hate for you to decide this other group of people, even though they're just humans. Yeah. But
oof, so good. so good.
Okay, so
those are like the characters, like the family that this book is centered around, and there's other characters that you will discover. But
yeah, and hopefully that helps a little bit. Again, if you don't remember any of this, it's fine. You'll still get the book.
But it just gives you some context going in.
I think it would have been easier for me to understand what was going on, who's who.
Same.
Yeah,
if I had this would have helped a lot.
I feel like I needed to create my own map of like, okay, that's those people. They're doing this.
Yeah. We don't feel compelled to give you a whole, like, chart. No. But we did think it would be helpful just to mention some of these names that you'll be reading.
Yeah. So. Okay, so then I want to just talk about the themes of the book a little bit. So this book, for me at least, I got a lot of themes of, we were going to talk about war, politics, but also grief. Yeah. And humanity and what humans go through when they're dealing with grief. So unless you have anything to say about the book, do you want to move on to this?
I think this is great.
Okay, awesome. So I kind of wanted to ask you, Lauren, what are other books that you have read that have helped you deal with grief? Because I feel like books in general can help us get through tough times in life and help us deal with grief, loss, sadness, really anything. And help us get out of that, basically. Yeah. Like, do you have anything in your past that you've read that has helped you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know. I am very much a book person. I'm also a very music person. A lot of music I've used to kind of help me process things. I haven't had like horribly traumatic things where like a book has really helped me get through. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of books that help me feel like I can empathize or at least sympathize with the characters. A book that I feel like has really helped me with a lot of things is A Monster Calls.
Oh, such a good one.
And we read this before it became a movie. Actually, I think we read it when they were making the screenplay for they were doing the screenplay for this book. So Monster Calls is by Patrick Ness. I read the illustrated version, which I highly recommend, because I don't know, like it's very helpful to like get into the visual of like the story. But this book, I think, helped me grapple with, I don't know, I kind of went through something similar to Mamoru, where I started figuring out, oh, things aren't as like black and white as I felt in the world. There's a lot more nuance, and also helped me deal with a lot of uncertainty that I was facing at that time in my life. And especially even now, like not even like in a tragic way, but just like, I don't know, I'm in the phase of life where I'm graduating and I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. And I feel like everyone's pushing me to like go into more school, and I'm not sure if that's actually what I want to do. I'm getting pushed to like get all these careers and where to live, and things are kind of like uncertain and feel kind of shaky. And I feel like Monster Calls really deals with a character who's like grappling with a lot of uncertainty in his life, and to the point where he almost wants the most unfathomable option to be his reality. Yeah.
What is A Monster Calls? Can you explain what that is?
Yes, I was going to say. So A Monster Calls is about, and they made a film and you may have seen it, and it's super good. I would recommend reading the book. But it is about this little boy, and his name is Connor, and his mother has cancer. And it's him kind of grappling with, he's basically a child, but he has to have to grow up super fast. And so he's not able to process his emotions all that much, except for this monster who comes to him and is going to tell him 3 tales. And by the time he gets to the 4th tale, Connor has to give his story. And Connor the whole time is like, I don't have a story. I don't know what you're talking about. Ooh, I'm just getting chills thinking about this. And so it's like this relationship with this boy and this monster who comes to him at the same time, like during these like nights that he's talking with the monster. And I was just going to give away one of the best quotes, I think, in the book. And there's a few others that I really enjoy, but this one was really kind of like the crowning part of why this book had really helped me. And also like, I'd be very curious to see how I would go back and revisit this book after the death of my grandpa. Mm-hmm. And like thinking about that, because though he didn't have cancer, he did have Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And just like things that were out of people's control, and just good people in your life that leave. And so anyways, there's this quote that says, "Because humans are complicated beasts," the monster said, "how can a queen be both a good witch and a bad witch? How can a prince be a murderer and a savior? How can an apothecary be evil-tempered but right-thinking? How can a parson be wrong-thinking but good-hearted? How can invisible men make themselves more lonely by being seen?" And I thought that was such incredible writing. Like I felt like it put words to what I had been thinking about, like, I don't know, the way people are, like just the nature of human beings. And I think the Sword of Kaigen is such a good book too. Like I probably would put that on my list too, with like having to get through like hard times of anxiety or uncertainty, or just like getting so frustrated with how the world is, because people are just so complicated little beasts, like this monster said. And I just think it's hard to be optimistic sometimes. And I felt like this book helped me be more positive, even though people can be, I don't know, so wrong thinking, but good-hearted, or good, like evil-tempered and right-thinking. Like it's very complicated.
I know. I feel like it's so frustrating when you find someone, you're like, oh, you're so nice, I love you, but you also do this, and I don't like that.
Yeah, and then you like went and told this person this, and I told you not to say anything. And so it's so hard to like, I don't know, coexist with people that can be so, I don't know, complicated, I guess. So,
and we all have that. There's like duality in everybody. We all have we were talking about this before the podcast. We all have this little tick that we do that might be annoying to someone else.
Yes. And we're unaware of it.
So loud.
That's like the most like innocent thing to like have a tick of.
No, but it's kind of the same thing. Like every single person or human being alive has faults and things about them that other people just might not like.
I know.
And you have to grapple with that.
And the whole point is like, I think you need to stay curious, because it will compel you to understand before you judge. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I think that's what really helped me with the Monster Calls, is, like, you need to be able to approach people with a curiosity to understand them. Because otherwise, you're just going to drive yourself crazy by your judgments on people. And so I think you just need to it's hard, but you got to understand why they do the things that they do. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I think about some people are like, oh, this old guy is so chatty. And I'm like, have you ever thought he may be living alone? Like, maybe he doesn't talk to anybody.
This is the first time, you're the first person he's talked to in weeks, possibly.
Yeah. And so, like, and maybe that's just a story you're making up in your head, but it's giving you that curiosity to try and understand why people do the things that they do.
Yeah.
But, so good. Anyways, Callie, like, what about you? Like, I know that there are things in your life that books have made, I don't know, not easier, but kind of held you while you're grappling with stuff.
Oh, 100%. Reading for me has been the outlet of trying to grapple with emotions that I'm feeling. I've always noticed when I'm going through a particularly hard time, I'll go back and reread books that I'm like, that helped me when I was feeling anxious.
Like an
or
old
sad.
friend. Like an
I'm
old
going to
friend.
read it again and it's going to help me.
I
But I've
love
also discovered stuff, specifically in high school, like ages 15 to 17. I had probably the worst anxiety of my entire life.
Yeah.
It was horrible and I couldn't function day to day. Like it just was not possible for me at that age to just go to school, hang out with friends, and I couldn't really figure out, like, I couldn't find anyone else out there that got it.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing a therapist, which was amazing, and it helped a ton.
Mm-hmm.
But I still felt like no one really understood what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to find something that I could read and relate to.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of really depressing stuff, which I don't know if helped or not. I don't know if it actually helped, but...
I love that, though. It was able to do what you needed it to do, though.
Yeah. So the two that I still own to this day, they're on my bookshelves. One of them is called Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella and Girl Online by YouTuber Zoe Suck, who I was obsessed with.
Oh, yeah.
Within this age. That book was definitely written by a ghostwriter, but it's fine. They both are about
What does that mean, ghostwriter?
You've never heard of this term before? What?
Okay, you guys. I don't know how many of you don't know this. I don't know what this is. Maybe I do.
What?
Is it just like...
You've definitely read stuff that's like memoirs. Those are all ghostwritten. It's like someone hires someone else to write it for them. Like James Patterson, he's definitely got ghostwriters.
Interesting.
Like, it's this... I have never ranted you about ghostwriters before. It's this whole thing. Like, all of the celebrities that come out with books... Those are all ghostwritten.
They had someone else write it for them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dear.
I can't believe you never... That's like a huge book world thing.
I can believe it in politics, too. Like, having other people write your speeches and, like...
Oh, yeah.
So
Anyways,
so like, definitely ghostwritten, but...
So they're not the best books to ever have been written.
Yeah.
But both of those deal with girls, ages 15 to 17, who are also going through anxiety. So I just felt like I was so seen in those books. Like it wasn't exactly what I was going through, but I was able to read them and be like, yeah, when I got in public, I also feel like that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it was like, okay, because that person, even though it isn't real, because that person in that book was able to do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And so it just helped me cope in a lot of different ways, in high school specifically with that. And then I would say, I have a couple on here. I would say later in life, after I came back from living in Japan and kind of before starting college, like that weird transition period of like early 20s, Little Woman was hugely impactful for me.
I love that. I've never read it.
You have to read it. So
I know.
good.
I want to read it around Christmas time, but I love Little Woman because I grew up watching the Winona Ryder version. And then Greta Gerwig created one. But they're so good. And
they're so good.
Please continue. Yeah.
No, you're good. Little Woman for me, I just loved the aspect of having a bunch of girls and how they went out and did different things and they were all the right thing.
Yeah.
Because I was going through like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what's going on. Am I going to choose the right thing? So each sister had their own path and they were all so different from each other. But they were all the right thing for them. It was all the right thing for them. Yeah. Like, what they chose ended up being right. And so that just gave me a lot of confidence in myself of whatever I choose, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be the right thing. And I'll probably have fails. I'll make mistakes. Looking now at almost 26-year-old me, looking back, there were some failures in there. But it was all the right thing to do. Like, I wanted what was the best for my life, and that is the path that is the right path, whatever it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. I think just being able to listen to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the hardest thing, though, is like being able to listen to yourself and what you want and what you feel like is the best for you versus what everyone else is saying. Because I have the problem where I want to please everybody.
Yeah.
Like I want people to be happy, and I don't want my decisions to like hurt other people, and that's not necessarily like my decisions will even affect them, but it's like maybe their perceptions of me. And so it's so hard to be able to like be in tune with yourself and not everybody else.
Yeah.
But Little Women is such a good example of that.
It's so good.
Cause like you have, what is it? Meg, who like wants family, but then you have Joe who wants to like be a writer and things like that. So cool.
What does Joe say in Greta Gerwig's movie? You'll get bored. We will never be boring.
Years, we will never be boring.
And then what does she say?
She's like, just because my dreams are different from yours doesn't make them unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. You guys, Little Woman's the bomb.
Little Woman's so good. We have to do Little Woman for this podcast at some point.
We'll eventually talk
do it.
It's so good.
Love Little Woman. And then just finally, just to tie it back to the Sword of Kaigen, I've read this 4 times. I'm kind of obsessed. Anyways, so I read it the first time, kind of around the same time I read Little Woman, and it just kind of helped me make sure that I stay open-minded about the people that are around me, and just to make sure that I don't know, it was just a good check-in to remember that we're all human, and how humanity can be really evil, and that can happen. Like, there are some, like, natural disasters, war. There's so much horrible stuff going on.
And some of it isn't even good or bad. It just happens.
It just happens. But there's always negative repercussions because of it. So this book really helped me remember that people at their core are good, though. Yeah. Like, you can always find good people out there.
Oh, that's such a debate, though, too.
Just like that hope just really kept me going.
Yeah. I'm so curious now that now I want to reread this again and be like, and I didn't finish the reread on this. Let me be honest. But I have read it before. But I wonder what it would be like rereading this, because I'm curious how some of the characters feel with that view. Like, I do feel like that book made me think that way, but I think there are some characters who do believe that people are inherently bad.
Oh, yeah.
But for me as a reader, when I read this, I think I take on more of the perspective of other characters, that there's good in everybody. But sometimes circumstances can just bring out the worst in people.
Oh, 100%.
So I love that comment.
I would argue that there are some people that were just born evil, that just came out of the womb.
Really?
100. Yeah, there's so many stories of serial killers who, as a 5-year-old, would go and abuse kittens just because.
What the heck?
Not because they were raised or anything that happened to them. That's just kind of how they are.
That creeps me out.
They're there's just something with them where their
morals
are
and not even
shifted.
Child abuse or anything. They just
are.
That.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I do think there's there is that out there, but the average human being, if I'm gonna go to a concert and I'm gonna look at the person next to me, I don't know, that person's gonna be inherently good to me. I don't know.
Benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Maybe that's naive.
But keep happy thoughts with my Winnie the Pooh mug over here.
And my sushi mug.
And your sushi mug. This one was a gift from a friend. My friend Emily.
Oh,
shout out to Emily.
But anyways, just to wrap up, I do have some honorable mentions that I do want to throw out there. I'm not going to explain why, but if you're just going through hard times in life, I think these books are great. So The Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier is amazing. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. That's the massive series I've read.
Yeah,
you can just read the first 3.
That's right.
And you'll get it. This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath.
Yes.
If Bill Street Could Talk by James Baldwin, and A Man Called Ove.
Oh my gosh. That wrecked me. So good.
Frederick Bachman. All of these books deal with some sort of grief, loss. Daughter of the Forest deals with a lot of what happens when you're abused, just tons of different things in there to help you deal
also with. There's this
evil side of humanity
of mourning your past that I think is a theme in this book. And also like being able to let it go.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm definitely I'm an incredibly nostalgic person. Like I'm the type of person that will spend like hours looking at old photos and videos. And like my family is huge into family videos. Like ever since we were little, we loved recording ourselves and we love looking back on it. Like Sundays or like Saturdays or like weekends when we're together, we will watch family videos together. We're very nostalgic. And I think it like gives me this, I get lost in my past and I mourn for like my past to the point where I don't live like my life now. And I think that's also like some of these stories kind of grapple with that because, I don't know, like sometimes people just don't think that their future can be just as like bright and fantastic as they're growing up. And so I think that's another thing that this book explores.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into the spoiler episode, but I would say that is Misaki's fault.
Yeah.
I am going to be honest. In the next episode, I'm going to be ruthless with Misaki.
Okay.
I have some thoughts about her.
But I think, honestly, like
But I think that's the point.
Yeah. And also, like, Misaki knows.
Oh, 100%.
So she's very self-aware about that. So anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Callie, for spearheading this episode.
I hope it makes sense. I'm really sorry I think you're editing this one, and I'm very sorry.
Oh, no, don't be.
I have to splice some things
I'm
together.
not even sure what should be taken out, though, because I feel like all of it was very valuable information and, like, gives very good texture, context before people go explore this book without like ruining anything. And like some people just like to read the book because they're just like, I just want to go in and not know anything. This would be kind of harder to do with this kind of book. So we hope that this is helpful, and like Callie did such a good job. And like, especially with your background in Japanese, it like knowing that about the characters is going to be very important to the story. And it just makes me want to meet Emma Wang and be like, you're my hero. Yeah, for real. And also like what a great writer. Like I think she's an incredible writer. So. So read this. Also, just a plug for her other book, Blood Over Bright Haven. Yes. So good. Go read it. It's like that's a perfect fall book. It's a dark academia. Dark academia. We love it. Brilliant. But thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Bye.